And it's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Alan Halls all the way from Lehigh, Utah. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, Howard.
My gosh, we're both dentists, but I have 4 boys and you have 3 daughters. He's married with 3 daughters. After working in IT for 13 years, he returned to school and graduated from Midwestern in 2013 in Glendale, Arizona, right?
Yes, sir.
Right up the street from me 5 years ago. Alan is a serial entrepreneur with multiple businesses, inventions, and patents while practicing dentistry part-time. He started using computers when he was 8, built his first at age 14, his first IT job at 17. One business many of the newer dentists may be familiar with is CourseSaver.com, which was started in 2020 and has helped over 75,000 students prepare for their DAT and other entrance exam. His newest business is ReminderDental, which follows the success of CourseSaver, offering comprehensive services at only $50 a month. Well, thanks for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor for me.
Where is Lehigh in relation to Salt Lake? Is it next to Provo?
It is just right between Provo and Salt Lake City, and so we get to take advantage of the programmer talent between both counties.
Well, as we speak right now, it's a, what is it, a Monday?
It is.
It's the Dentrix user meeting is right there. Were you aware that that's in Provo today?
I didn't. We're actually just about 2 miles away from the Dentrix office here.
Yeah, so we set our editor, Tom Giacobbe, up there. So he's up there right now. But the point I was making is we did an issue on Dental Town. You know how they call it Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Utah, they call Silicon Slopes. I mean, there's so many dental companies there. I mean, you got Dentrix and Ultradent and Arrowhead, and can you rattle off the list of all the companies?
Well, you can't anymore. People who may have driven through this area years ago wouldn't recognize it. I saw an article a couple of years ago where they had enough office space currently planned, that it would exceed the World Trade Centers, I think 2 times over. Seems like every time I drive down the I-15, there's another 7-story building that is just massive. And so it's a lot of those companies are tech related. And so, you know, as you're graduating from Utah or graduating from dental school and you think, where should I set up my practice? Of course, everyone's first thought is Utah. And not really. It's the highest saturation in the U.S.
Yeah, it's the dentist. When you look at median income for dentists, the lowest median income state is Utah.
By a lot.
And it's a tough question because I'm down here in Phoenix, which they call South Utah. I mean, there's I think the second biggest. I think the first biggest place if you were born and raised in Utah and leave is to go to Arizona. And so many of those kids at Midwestern, I tell them demographics matter, and they say, well, family matters more, and I'd rather, so they're
Yep.
going back despite. So let's start with your CourseSaver. Did you start that when you were at Midwestern Dental School in Glendale, Arizona?
So I'd actually started during my freshman year of college. A good key example of why it was so important was that during my physics class, they said, you have to turn in a physics lab report. And I raised my hand. I'm like, hey, do you have a sample of what this lab report should look like? And they said, no. Like, do you have an outline of what you're expecting? They're like, no. Like, do you have anything at all that could help me understand what it is you're looking for? And the answer was no. And so I grew up in IT, and it was really a shame to me that at that time, I think it was 2005, 2006, that there was no resources available. And so I decided at the time that I was going to make everything that I did available online. And so I started posting pictures of like the anatomy lab, biology lab, dissections. I did all of my lab reports. No matter what kind of a grade I got, I posted it, and with all the red lines and everything, so that nobody was going to get stuck like me wondering what in the world that was expected of them. Along the way, we started videotaping some lectures, and one of those lecture series really took off. It's known as Chad's Videos on CourseSaver, and the time that we went back and looked at it, his entire lecture series was being downloaded 60 times per day. And so we realized at that time that it was important and we needed to make it better because there was a lot of people that wanted to use it but just couldn't. So we made it better, and things just really took off. We started the business side of it during my freshman year of dental school. So
is it still a thing? Is it still something you maintain?
It is.
Now that
it is.
You're not in dental school?
It is. We've continued providing these services. Throughout dental school, we experienced about a 300% growth year over year. Of course, there's only so long you can keep that up with a limited pool, but we did the math, and we were doing about 80% of all incoming dental students were using our platform.
Now I see on your, I'm at CourseSaver right now on my iPhone.
Correct.
And I see DAT, MCAT, OAT, PCAT, NBDE1, NBDE2.
Right.
So the MCAT's med school. So you do this for dentistry and medicine?
Yes, there's separate videos available for each category. There's some overlap, of course. The dental.
What's OAT?
Optometry.
Okay. And then PCAT?
Pharmacology.
And then NBDE?
National Board Dental Exam Part 1 and Part 2. So during our third and fourth years of dental school, I recruited an army of fellow dental students, and we went through prep material, and so we had flashcards, and I said, your goal is to take every concept on that flashcard and write 6 questions. And so for national boards, I think we've got about 6,000 national boards prep questions with full explanations, like massively good explanations. So.
Well, that was the way I always studied. It was so easy because if you knew the test was going to be 40 multiple choice questions like it always was, and you knew these were the 3 or 4 chapters that were going to be on the test, instead of reading and memorizing, I'd always read thinking I was the teacher, trying to write every test question I can. And I always thought it was a victory if you went in there and you came up with 200 questions and 35 of them were on the test.
Yeah.
And that is a really awesome way to study, which is backwards.
Well, it was interesting. The CourseSaver website was really rethought from the ground up, how to study. As we were building the website, there was all these tools available for classroom, lecture style types, but what they didn't have was tutoring style. The difference being that if you're taking a test, a lot of times, as I was going through my DAT practice, you get all of these questions and you're like, I almost don't even have to read the question or the answer anymore because I've taken it so many times, because I know I read this question, oh, it's the third answer down. And then you get to the end of the test and they give you an overall 80% and you're like, okay, great, I'm doing okay, or whatever. And so with CourseSaver, we redid that, and as you have the option of, as soon as you answer a question, it can tell you no, that's not the right question, or the right answer, and it can tell you why. And the reason is I didn't want people to accidentally remember the wrong answer because they just moved on. They're like, I gave it my best guess and I'm going to move on. And then they remembered that they got a good score on the test, and so whatever answer they gave, whether it was right or wrong, ended up with a good result. And so I wanted to train them that wasn't right. And so then we also mix up the order of the answers so that they're not always in the same order. People have to actually read the question and the answer. And so a lot of what we did had to be custom built because those tools weren't available without custom building it. In the math area, everything has a video solution, other ones have written solutions. So anyway.
It's really bizarre because if you look at the budgets of all 50 states, education is the largest cost of all 50 states. And it's just amazing how, I got a bunch of grandkids in school now, and they still don't do anything differently than when I was there. I mean, you still have a human up there reading in front of the class. And me being a boy who raised 4 boys, I can just look out at the class and say, okay, that guy's staring out the window dreaming about catching frogs and snakes. He don't even know what she's saying. He's not even tuned in.
Right.
And she spends half the day saying, pay attention, look over here, pay attention, look. And if the kid moves too much, then she thinks he should be on medication. So your business model is what, $50 a month for these dental students?
It is. So, you know, you look at the competition of Kaplan, Princeton Review, other resources, and they charge several $1,000s for their study materials. At the time that I started CourseSaver, I was planning on being a dentist, and we weren't relying on it for income. It just really had to support itself. And so we looked at the variable cost. What does it cost us per student? And we tried doing it at $20 a student, and it turns out that that was too low at the scale that we were at. And so we had to raise the prices a little bit, and then around $50, it gave us enough to provide a quality service. And then with the growth, then it became extremely profitable as well. And so it kind of changed my career trajectory a little bit, which is why we did end up in Utah, was because programmer resources became more important than dental income.
And you know why there's so many programmers in Utah?
Well, Utah has more startup businesses than almost anywhere else in the country.
Because they came there for the programmers.
Maybe. That's one reason.
But you know who started the programmers?
I believe it was potentially the BYU Marriott School of Business. There's a lot of really good business schools here, and engineering and robotics and all of these different things. And then you end up with a bunch of small businesses with a lot of technology needs, and that attracts people, and it's driven up wages. To where they can make a really good living here. And that has so when I was graduating from dental school and I was looking for programmer resources, there was really just about 4 or 5 major cities in the US that we could end up in. And you know, there was some areas that we didn't want to live in for either from lifestyle or taxes or other reasons. And Utah just seemed like the perfect fit. And so as we drove through town, our first drive through Salt Lake City on I-15, we saw all of these billboards directed towards programmers, and it was so foreign coming from Phoenix. We're like, oh my gosh, we really are in the right place. And I continue to believe that's true.
Yeah, I just remember, so I'm 55, and how old are you?
41.
So how old were you during the last tech bug, the last time it crashed? It was March of 2000. How old were you March of 2000?
I think I was about 22. Oddly enough, I was working for the guy who's working behind me, his brother, who he had built Today.com. He used to own StockMarket.com, Woman.com, Delivery.com. I was their network administrator, webmaster. And during that .com bust, they had a multi-million-dollar business and or product that they had developed over the years, and it was finished, and they couldn't find funding to put it on the shelf. It was the saddest thing for us because it was.
But going back to Utah, I remember there's between that 94 to 2000 that
Sure.
big run up. A lot of those companies,
Novell,
the founders of Novell, and even companies that weren't in Utah, like Sun Microsystems. I remember Scott McNeely going on these rants, telling these states that we can't go to your state if you don't have a bunch of programmers. And he was talking about how the school curriculums were all wrong, and Utah really got out in front of it. Utah listened to them, and Sun Microsystems and Oracle and all these companies said, this is what we need. And then J.R. Simplot was the big Idaho potato farmer, was also really involved in Utah because Idaho it didn't have enough population to make the programmer. So when J.R. Simplot was investing in other companies, he said, hell, there's companies I want to invest in where the entire population of Idaho wouldn't be big enough. And so a lot of really smart people was telling all the states, and Utah was one that massively listened, that if you create a supply of IT people, a bunch of companies are going to come there. And that's why you have Silicon Slopes. It's amazing. So your new project, so CourseSaver is doing well. It's still doing well today.
It does.
And it's doing well enough where you're not fixing teeth in a dental office, right?
It is. It's actually been one of the greatest blessings for us for this new project. You know, a lot of businesses...
Which is ReminderDental.
ReminderDental, yeah. So most projects like this would have had to go out and look for multi-million-dollar funding. They would have worked as hard as they could till the funding runs out or is in need of or you know, they can see the writing on the wall. Then they have to launch, whether they're ready or not. They have to charge a fortune because that's the only way to make up their investment. And so ReminderDental has been built a little bit different. We've been working on it for about 2.5 years, and we have never been willing to release it until it was ready. And we believe that through building a quality product, we won't necessarily even need a sales staff. CourseSaver.com had no sales, no advertising staff, no marketing budget, and we took over the entire market by having a better product at a lower price. We believe the same thing is possible within ReminderDental. We've built it with almost no overhead, or the operating costs have almost no overhead, and there's no debt in the business. It was all personally funded. So as soon as we start signing up customers, we're going to be profitable.
So is ReminderDental, is it up and running now?
It is, yes.
When did it go live?
We started taking in customers back in May, and so we've expanded. We have been very carefully recruiting some offices over the past several months. We've watched other companies that had very good ideas, very good products, launch and experience overwhelming success, which overwhelmed their service. We've been very careful not wanting to repeat their mistakes because we saw the negative feedback that consumers had when they would sign up and the service that they were paying for, that their office relied on, wasn't available. And so we wanted to ensure that we didn't scale too fast, and so we grew slowly, and then finally we've decided that it was time to come out of the closet, so to speak, and let everyone know.
Well, you know who that reminds me of is Herb Kelleher of Southwest Airlines. I was born and raised in Wichita, and whenever I'd want to fly home to Wichita, Southwest didn't go to Wichita. And the state of Kansas told Southwest Airlines, look, we'll buy you your $50 million 737, we want your service. And Herb Kelleher said, we're not ready to go to Wichita. And that growing too fast is worse than growing too small. And he called it Southwest Airlines, and he was in Texas for many, many years. He just got to Wichita a few years ago.
Oh, really?
I mean, just a couple of years ago, he just started Wichita. So yeah, growing too fast. And then another example I want to give the listeners is that a lot of these dentists will go find some venture capital and some private equity, and they'll go raise $10 million, then they'll go buy 10 $1 million offices, and they'll say, oh, look at us, we went from 0 to 10 million in 1 year. Mm-hmm. And then they just implode because they didn't have the systems. I mean, taking one dental office to 2 would be the greatest feat you ever did, and all the systems you had to do. And then to turn 2 into 3 would be about 50% less stress. Mm-hmm. And then by the time you did 4, it'd be 25% stress. And then by the time you go from 9 to 10, it'd only be 10%. So a lot of these DSOs, I mean, East West Bank, we've already had one of the biggest DSO lenders in the dental industry stop lending to DSOs because of all their default rates. And people aren't talking about that. People who talk about how DSOs are going to take over, I always say, well, can you please tell me two things? Why did East West Bank stop loaning to them? And number two, how come not a single one of them could do an IPO on Wall Street tomorrow? Why would not one stockbroker at Goldman Sachs believe anything they're saying? Because they're buying earnings. They go 10 million in debt to get 10 million in sales, and they don't have any systems. So growing slowly, putting your systems in place, getting your team ahead of the growth is everything. So I applaud you for growing intelligently instead of growing rapidly.
Sure. And another thing is a good for instance is, we've had a bunch of dental offices syncing with us. And one of the features that our software has is multilingual services, where you can, if your patients speak Russian or Italian or French or whatever, you can include the custom audio for any of those languages or custom text messages or emails. Now, just because our service supports multiple languages, and we had tested it with English and Spanish, everything was working great. We had an office the other day synchronized with English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and all of a sudden it was throwing an error. We're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so as we identify, so building it for, as you say, one office is easy. Building it for two offices, not so bad. But if we were to have 80 people all start synchronizing, we wanted to make sure that we had identified all possible variances between their data so that there weren't any issues with that. And we want to be able to offer a consistent service with everyone, even though some dentists, for example, we've got one in Canada that doesn't use the recall schedule within their software. They just look at the patient's chart and say, it looks like it's been a while since you've had a cleaning. And yet we offer recall reminders. And so how do we offer a similar service to somebody who doesn't use the system the same way as somebody who uses the recall system to a T? That's one of the reasons why we've been moving carefully, is we want to make sure that no matter what kind of data people send us, that we're ready for it.
Well, by the way, I just want to tell you on your website, the email link says service at https://.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, owning Dental Town, I'm really trained to be looking for bugs.
All right.
So
well, Spencer's right behind me. He'll start working on that right now.
Yeah. So you see that on the
contact us page.
Yeah, on the contact us page, it says service at http.com.
Oh, great.
So I'll send you a bill for $3 for finding that bug. So Warren Buffett, my idol, always says that if you can't explain your business on a 5x7 index card, he's not going to invest in it because he says you don't know what you're doing. So tell my homies, what is ReminderDental.com? Why should they go to ReminderDental.com?
All right. So Reminder Dental is going to offer all of the best reminder services that you can get. It is customizable and flexible for every office's needs. It doesn't just serve the 90 percentile. And so we've built it with flexibility in mind. It is all dental service companies, from the dental analytics for front office, back office, reminders, we're all pulling from the same data. And I think it's a shame that people are paying multiple services for essentially remanipulating the same data over and over. We believe that we can provide all of those services by just continuing to add to our service portfolio. And so and because of our price point, we believe that we can do it and remain profitable, continuing to add to our services. There will be some that we might add, an extra $10 a month here or $20 a month there. So for example, home hosting pre-op, post-op videos for people. If you want to be able to, for us to host your website, do all of these different things, we might charge a little bit more for that. But I firmly believe that appointment reminders is a $50 a month service. And
I always, I've been going up to Provo, Utah for 30 years because obviously if you're a dentist, if you're a Muslim, you need to go to Mecca in Saudi Arabia. If you're a dentist, you got to go to Provo and see Gordon Christian, the god of dentistry. I think I've taken like 12 of his 2-day courses up there. But that's where Dentrix was up the street. And I just think of all these little companies that sprouted off around Dentrix within a mile or two of them that should have all been in Dentrix.
I know. I believe.
Is that just me? Am I seeing that wrong, or do you agree?
No, I completely agree. And
I mean, how many companies can you name that wouldn't even exist if Dentrix would have done it?
All of them.
Yeah, I know. So my question I want to ask you is I call it Dentistry Uncensored because I'm just brutally honest. I just like honesty. I think honest people just simply don't care about critics or criticism. I could care less what you think of me. I'm trying to help a homie who just walked out of school with $400,000 in debt. One of the first questions he's going to ask is, I'm setting up my own dental office, and then they're going to end up setting up because, like you first worked for a chain, right?
Mm-hmm. I did.
And how did that work out?
Horrible.
I know. So that's what I can't believe. I'm in these dental schools. They're like, well, the chains say we have to go work for them because in 20 years, it's like they say, oh, Howard, he's old. And when he was little, all the pharmacists had their own shop. And now all the pharmacists work for Walgreens and CVS. I'm like, okay, well, and they say you're all gonna work for a chain, so you better join us now, and then later. And then I say, okay, well, why don't you go back to the graduates 5 years ago that all went and worked for those chains? How many of them are still there?
Yeah,
What percent quit after the first year?
Oh, I have
in your experience.
I only made it a few months with the chain.
I know. So I'm like, okay, so if you go back 5 years and 90% of all your classmates are no longer there after 2, mm-hmm. I mean, they're not keeping them 1 or 2 years. What they're trying to do is delay. It's fear. They live in, you live in fear and greed. Greed is, I'm really thirsty. I want to go drink out of that lake. Mm. And fear is, I can see the crocodiles sitting in the lake. So what's a bigger stimulus? It's the fear. So if you look at Wall Street, the 10 biggest one-day gains are a lot smaller move than the 10 biggest one-day fear falls. Sure. So they're going to have to do the inevitable. They're going to have to do the dirty. I graduated May 11. I had my office open September 21st because it took me, May 11 to September 20. What is that, 110, 130 days or whatever that is? So you're going to do it. So just go do it. And it's the same thing with kids. I made 4 boys in 60 months. And my point is, there's never a good time to have kids or start a business. They're both going to be horribly stressful, overwhelming events. So get it over when you're young and dumb and have energy and bouncing off the walls. Don't wait till you're 55 and fat and tired and couldn't do it again. So when they open up their own office, the first brutal question they're going to ask is, well, come on, dude, you're in IT. You've been in this business space for a long time. Which ones should they get? The big ones are Dentrix, EagleSoft, SoftNet, Open Dental. What would you tell them?
So from my standpoint...
And I know this is tough for you because you're a Utah boy and you're up the street from Dentrix. You probably have hunting and fishing buddies that work there.
Well, I've hired some of their programmers in the past, but here's the reality in my book is Dentrix created a really good product. What was it, 30 years ago? They locked in their customers, and people don't want to change. Once you have that much data in your database, changing is painful. And so when people look at cost-benefit analysis, how much is it going to cost them to invest in redoing and adding all of these features that we talked about into their platform? And if they do that, will they make any extra money? And I was with one of the Dentrix guys earlier this year, and he said flat out to me The people like us are going to put them out of business because we want to innovate, because we want new customers. And so it has seemed that Dentrix innovates through acquisition. They acquired DemandForce. They didn't go build the features themselves. They could have, they should have, but they didn't want to. So they bought DemandForce. They purchased, they're buying out other practice management solutions rather than attracting people away from their existing practice management system by offering a better platform. They're gaining customers through acquisition of other software companies. Companies like Open Dental and will be required to innovate to a greater degree than any other company because they want to attract new customers, and because those customers are not locked in. They could leave any day they wanted. There is nothing that would prevent a data transfer from Open Dental to Patterson, Eaglesoft, Dentrix, MagPractice, any of those companies. And so because of that freedom in the customer, then companies like Open Dental will be required to innovate to a greater degree than anyone else. Now, just saying that they're going to innovate doesn't really convey a lot of confidence in where they're at now. But I want to say Open Dental is one of the best practice management softwares I've ever seen, and their customers are fanatics about how much they love it. If you look on Dental Town, if you talk to Open Dental customers, they love it, and not because they have no choice.
Yeah, I was on SoftEd for 30 years, and I switched last year to Open Dental because on Dental Town, they just have raving fans. And you're right about Henry Schein. Stan Bergman, who we had on the show, I mean, he's an amazing guy. Now they're starting Henry Schein 1, and you've been following Henry Schein 1. They bought DemandForce, DentalFind.com, DentalPlans.com, Office Sites, Sesame. That's no, and the new CEO is Robert N. Briscoe, the CEO of Internet Brands, Dental Plans, DemandForce, Offsite, eDoctors, and that's just the dental ones. I mean, in medical, they own like WebMD, but again, it's like some big Wall Street investment play. So I like tell young dentists, yeah, if you want to buy a stock, that might be a really, really good stock to buy. But as far as keeping it down and dirty in your dental office, you'd recommend Open Dental?
I like it.
Yeah. Would that be your first choice?
Yeah, and that is what I use in my practice.
Yeah.
It's what my family uses.
And it's started by a dentist.
It is.
Yeah.
And that
Nathan
and that
Sparks.
makes a really big difference.
And why? You know why Nathan
something-
started it?
Because he didn't like what he was using before.
Yeah, I mean, it just so what? So then, how much does it cost your service?
So our fee,
ReminderDental.com.
so our fee is $50 a month.
So you're still doing the CourseSaver fee?
It is
Just a down and dirty $50 a month.
It is. Now most services are between $300 and $500 a month, and we believe firmly that it is a $50 a month service. Now, some software packages, like Dentrix, do not provide an open platform for us to connect to, and they charge an additional fee. And because of the low price of our service, we can't absorb that fee ourselves. And so a Dentrix customer will end up paying an additional $30 a month for the write-back privileges to set the appointment complete within their software. But
all your advertisements should have a grant, Ulysses S. Grant on the ad, because he's on the $50 bill.
There you go.
You should just brand the $50 bill onto all your advertising platforms.
So one of our goals is to show, as people are graduating from school, selecting a practice management software, you look at the price and you say, well, gee, I can sign up with Dentrix and it's going to cost me how many thousands of dollars to start up, how many thousands of dollars per year in maintenance fees with them. And then when they sign up with other services like ReminderDental, they're going to have to be charged an additional fee on top of that. Or they could go with other services that are less expensive. And I'd also like to use that as leverage when negotiating with companies like Dentrix and EagleSoft to say, look, your customers will pay more for our services, which will encourage them to select a different practice management solution. We want to drive people to the best software on the market. And to us, the best one is the one that's the most open.
I know. So back to Open Dental, it was Jordan Sparks, a dentist in Oregon. He was trying to extract data from Dentrix, and he found out that not only could he not do it, but he realized they had paid programmers to build firewalls around it so that he couldn't. He's like, oh my God, not only can I not do it, they purposely made it so I couldn't. And talk about how Dentistry still does that with the insurance downgrade.
So
talk about that.
Within Dentrix, as far as I can tell, I have access to virtually every piece of data that we need for practically anything, with the exception of I tried showing the patient balance. What does the patient owe? Not their total balance that includes insurance claims, but just the patient portion. Very easy thing to do with Open Dental. And I spent 2 weeks of long days, late nights, trying to even to just estimate that data. And before Dentrix just flat out said it's unavailable. And the reason why is as there is the insurance downgrades, where if you do a composite filling in the posterior that should have been an amalgam, then the insurance is only going to pay X, and that means the patient is going to owe another portion on top of that. And so I can tell you one of two things. I can tell you what the patient would owe if insurance covered everything, or I could tell you what the patient owes without any insurance. But if I do it just the total patient balance, I had an office where it showed the patients for this office had an overdue balance of like $18,000. And I'm like, man, that's actually just supposed to be a few hundred, but I can't arrive at a good number for Dentrix. And I think that's part of their desire to keep customers from leaving, because again, how painful would it be to have an office with 20,000 patients and then lose all of your insurance downgrade information?
Yeah, we did it. We just bought the bullet and we just did it. And the other thing that was most surprising is that not only do we love it and all that stuff, but we didn't have any of the crashes, the support, the IT maintenance. I mean, it was just such a more stable system, because I got 5 programmers with Dentaltown. So I feel sorry for the dentist that doesn't have 5 programmers working for him. He's got hygienists, he doesn't have programmers. And my programmers are just like, oh my God, we should have switched from, years and years ago. So
now, Howard, can I interrupt you for a second?
Absolutely.
Have you ever called Open Dental tech support?
I have done it with my office manager.
Okay. So every time I've called Open Dental tech support, I get off the phone with a huge smile on my face. They have the most amazing staff. It's easy to get a hold of them. They're extremely knowledgeable about their product. They're not just reading off of a check sheet to say a flow chart that says, okay, they're having a problem here. It means I should walk them through here. They're creative. They know everything. And I just remember I called up their company last year and I just said, hi, my name's Alan Halls, and I was hoping to talk to the president, the CEO. And within a few minutes, I was on the phone with Nathan Sparks, Jordan's brother, and I was just like, I've got to tell you, you have the most amazing staff. I don't know how he finds these people, but
I got to interrupt you now. I own a media company. They're the only ones who don't advertise. So all these other companies with all these threads on Dental Town bitching and moaning and complaining, they're all spending a ton of money on advertising. And I couldn't even get Jordan to do a podcast with me. His brother Nathan held out for like a year. And I said, well, what's the deal? And he goes, well, we're growing so fast, word of mouth, and I have to attract and retain quality key customer support people. And when I hire someone to answer the phone, there's a lot of training involved, and we don't want to attract any noise. We're growing too fast without advertising, just by word of mouth referral.
And it works. It
so
really
if
works.
You're listening to this, like, hello, I mean, what do I have to do? I have to spell it out for you? I have to fly you to and I have no, not only do I have no economic incentive, not only do I have no financial money, the people that I'm dissing give me money. And the person who doesn't give me money is the one I'm recommending. So I mean, god dang, how much my sales team, they gave up on me years ago. They said, well, Howard, I said, some guy will buy a big advertising campaign, and then Howard will go badmouth him on his lectures, his column, his podcast.
Just give him a free banner. Come on, you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, like I say, he's growing too fast. I mean, and the other thing is, what city is he in Utah? It's a small, is it?
No, Open Dental is up in, I think, Washington or Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon. That's what I've been. What was I saying?
You said Utah.
Oh no, yeah, Oregon. But it's a small town. He doesn't, So a lot of these dental companies. What is it?
Is it Eugene?
Yeah, Eugene, Oregon. And I've met like Heartland Dental. Poor Rick Workman started in Effingham, Illinois. It's a population of 10,000. And to run Heartland Dental, he's told me, I think I've hired every single person that wants a job in all of Heartland. And remember that big computer company that was going toe-to-toe with Dell? Was it Gates? The one that had the
Gateway?
Gateway? And they were in South Dakota.
Oh, my.
And Pizza Hut was in Wichita, Kansas. And Wall Street was saying, and by the time they finally moved from South Dakota to San Diego, it was too late. Dell had already won. And when I was in MBA school and they were doing all the case studies, they said that was the problem. And Pizza Hut, when they left Wichita, Kansas and went to Dallas, I mean, you'd think the Kansas people thought that Pizza Hut had, shot the last living penguin on Earth. And, it was just the most horrible thing ever. But Pizza Hut's like, we need people. We have to. Right. And so what is the top 3 reasons why you should pay you a grant, Ulysses S. Grant $50 bill every month? Why should my homies who are driving to work listen to you say, why should I give Alan Halls and $50 a month?
Gosh, I think the bigger question is, why should you pay anyone else $300? But for us, it's the best service. When you look at, here, let me share my screen really quick. We're the only company I have seen that actually has a dashboard that shows you a calendar. We take that data, we analyze it, and we say, look at Salvador. He's had 6 appointments total. He's missed 3 of them. Okay, we've texted him, but he hasn't confirmed yet. So tomorrow, your office staff needs to know that they're going to need to reach out to Salvador and get him in the office. And if this was a different day, so let's say this was today and Misty was the one that was going to be a no-show. What the dentist might do is look at John's chart and talk to John when he gets in and says, John, my 8 o'clock may not show up. If I have extra time today, would you like to start those crowns that we've been waiting on? So we have the appointment statistics. We can tell them, every step. For example, this one, they've got a red dot in the corner. The reason why is they scheduled this appointment yesterday, and that means that we can't go through an automated schedule to do that. So the dashboard is awesome. The action items here, that shows us how much is the front office responsible for collecting today, from who? And it will go through and show every patient who needs a cleaning, And if they have any children or spouses that need to schedule, let's schedule the whole family while anybody's in the office. So we have tools that help you manage your existing clientele. We have tools that help you expand. We've got, when we looked at communications, I've got an office here down the street from me that's only open one day a week. And they purchased Solution Reach, and they can't use it because the way Solution Reach's schedule works is great for the 90 percentile dentist that's open 5 days a week, 8 to 5. Doesn't work great for an office that is not. So here, you can define any schedule you want, and then you can set it up by procedure codes. So if you want to send somebody with an IV sedation a different email than you do everyone else, you can. And when I say it's flexible, it's really flexible. When we talk about growing your business, do you know where your patients live? Do you know where, it's just because you know where all of your patients live, do you know where the patients are that have been in within the last 6 months or the next 6 months? If you want to relocate your practice, you don't want to lose, you don't want to move farther away from your biggest customer base. If you own multiple practices, I can show you how to identify the patients that are driving past one practice to get to the other, and then you can identify those patients based off of whether they haven't been in within the last year, so that you reach out and tell them, we have a new office location that might better serve your needs. Let's say you see a patient, an emergency patient at 9 o'clock in the morning, that throws your whole schedule off. You can come in and you can text message the rest of the afternoon, let them know to show up a little bit late to adjust for that.
And who does that? Back, my dad had 9 Sonics in 4 states, and back in the day, Dan Carney, the founder of Pizza, is a friend of mine. But you know what they had to do back then? And Dennis never even thought about this service you provide. And here's what I saw in Dan Carney's Pizza Hut when I was 10 years old. They'd have a big old 6 foot by 4 foot map of the city on an easel. And when you walk in, they'd ask you to put a pin where you live. And then they would do a cannibalization study. They'd say, okay, because this store is too busy, but everybody's coming from east. Nobody's coming from north, south, west. So they would drive 3 miles down the street and put another Pizza Hut there. And then these dentists, they don't know where their people are coming from. And it makes sense because there's a lot of psychological barriers on these humans that Dan Carney, founder of Pizza Hut, taught me when I was little, that they were interstates, rivers. Like you go to Pittsburgh, a crazy city because it's got 3 rivers running through town. And monkeys, humans are talking animals, and they would rather drive 5 miles east than drive 1 mile west if they had to cross an interstate or a river. It's just a psychological barrier. So when you start seeing where all your people are coming from, you realize, okay, nobody's coming from across the river, across the interstate, for whatever monkey reason there is. Then now you know where to target your marketing.
Right. So now what you know when you know that is you don't want to relocate your existing practice to the other side, but because you would lose your existing customer base. But if you wanted to expand and put in a second office, then you want to build on the other side because now you're capturing a market that is completely new.
Absolutely. It's just so what questions was I smart enough to ask you? I can't believe we've already been
oh gosh, I don't know how long we've been going, but
55 minutes.
All right, so again, we don't have
who's your main competition? Who's in your space?
I like to think we don't have any competition. The people in our space, of course, are Solution Reach, Lighthouse, Demand Force, Legwork, but
okay, Solution Reach, Lighthouse, Demand Force. Okay, so who owns Solution Reach? Who bought them?
Oh gosh, I don't. Who
was it? Quicken?
Maybe I forgot that they had been purchased, but it rings a bell.
So Demand Force is Henry Schein, and Lighthouse, and those are all about how much money a month?
They're about 300. Legwork, I love their ad. It says, they have an ad that says, still paying $300 for appointment reminders? Try Legwork, it's only $100 a month. And then you go to their website and you start looking at what you get for $100, and you're like, well, that doesn't really work. And so then you choose their $300 a month package. But I'm an economics type. I loved economics in school. And the example I give, and the reason why I say I don't really feel like we've got competition, is that if I pulled up to your house with a pallet full of your favorite soda, and I said, Howard, I've got your favorite soda here. It's only 50 cents a can. How many cans of soda do you want? And you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know, maybe I'll buy a 6-pack. But if I come up to you and say, Howard, I've got your favorite soda here, and it's only 6 cents a can, all of a sudden you were not in the market to buy soda today. And yet, at that price, all of a sudden I converted you into a customer, and you start looking around the garage for where you can put the whole pallet, right? And so I believe that through price control, I can create demand. And so there are a lot of people who are not customers of any any reminder service because their existing prices are just too high. They'd rather pay their front office to do it. But they look at our service and they say, how can we afford not to use ReminderDental? We don't have a sales staff currently. We've had people that have asked if they can be our sales staff and even work on commission only. We've had dental companies ask what our partnering plans are for them. But instead, what we do is we get out and we talk to our customers. My programmers and I, we go out and we knock on doors and say, look at this product, show us what you wish you had, show us what features are important to you that you use the most. And on our website, we have a section where anybody can request features, and then every other office can vote on it. And that way, we'll work on the most requested features first. We want to give you key analytics. We want to help you with your morning huddle report. We want to help you manage your business more effectively. And essentially, like I said, every software company out there that helps dentists are working with the same exact data. We just have to know which way you want us to crunch it. And so we're going to focus all of our time and money on building the best product possible. And so I think that's one of the reasons is like Open Dental, who will be forced to innovate constantly to stay ahead. We will also want to innovate constantly to stay ahead of any other company.
I'm posting right now. You had posted on, the reason I called you is because you had posted on Dental Town.
Yes, those dog pictures.
Those dog pictures?
With the dentures.
Oh, that one the other day. No, it was on August 9th. You said you started a thread, 4 free months of appointment reminders for Open Dental users.
Yes.
Do you remember that post?
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought so. Why did you do that? What made you post that, and why was it just for Open Dental and not Dentrix, SoftEd, EagleSoft?
So as we were working all the bugs
And
out
is
of
that
our
offer
system,
still good?
it is. In fact, I'll tell you what. I'm going to reactivate the $200 coupon. I'm going to bump the limit up to, let's say, 50, and then I'll put the $150 coupon up, and we'll put another 50 on it. I'll then add a $100 coupon, and we'll do 100 customers at that. So that'll give people anywhere from 2 to 4 months to try our services risk-free, anything they want. Now, the reason why we initially targeted Open Dental is the way Dentrix data acquisition works is they have one price if you're a read-only company, and they have a second price if you want to read and write. And so we have been working extensively with the read-only license, and we are making, we've gone ahead and bitten the bullet on the right back access. And so people who want right back access on Dentrix should be able to get that towards the end of this week. And then we are expanding Dentamax practice management software. We've been able to get access to them. We've been working with EagleSoft for a year to try getting access. They just let us know last week, because of this podcast actually, that they're going to move forward with giving us access to EagleSoft. They were in the middle of a large software upgrade, and they didn't want to rock the boat in the middle of their upgrade.
Who was that?
And so EagleSoft.
And they're at Effingham, where Heartland is.
Okay.
Yeah, that is really amazing how their Heartland Dental and EagleSoft, both out of Effingham, Illinois. Do you know where Effingham is?
I don't.
It's in the middle of effing nowhere. It's in the middle. I mean, it really is. It's truly. I mean, it's like halfway between. It's out in the middle of Illinois. I mean, it's like 2 hours this way to St. Louis, 2 hours north to Chicago. Their only claim to fame is two major intersections juncture there, and and it was a McDonald's. And I was so lucky because the first time I went there, and by the way, you guys, listen to this. I flew with my own money to Provo, Utah to talk to Dentrix. I flew out to Maryville, to Effingham to talk to Dentrix. I flew up to Minneapolis, St. Paul and talked to Pete Frechette. I mean, I use my own money and my own resources pleading this guy. To this day, for 30 years, I've been on the same mission. I mean, if I walk up to any, we went over an hour, so I'll just wrap it up right now. But if you go up to any dentist right now, when I was little, it was the phone book and direct mail. Now it's this iPhone thing, which I never saw coming when I was in college. I never thought when I graduated from dental school that someday I'd have a damn IBM supercomputer in my pocket with more power than the computers on the space shuttle and the Apollo that landed on the moon. And you go up to the desk, say, okay, your website. How many people land on your website a month? I don't know. Then you start tracking, you find out that for every 100, only 3 convert to call. How many people called your office last month? I don't know. I say, okay, well, it's August. It's August in the first half of the year. January, February, March, April, May, June. How many incoming calls do you have? I don't know. How many land on your website? I don't know. On your website, how many people have to land on your website before they convert and call your office? I don't know. How many people have to call your office before your untrained staff can convert one to come in? I don't know. How many people do you tell? I mean, I don't like measuring treatment plan acceptance rates because everybody treatment plans differently. I got a buddy down the street from me that 100% of all his patients, when he comes in, he wants them to remove all their amalgams, all their gold, all their PFMs, and rebuild it all with Empress. I mean, so we all.
What a disservice!
I'm just talking about a radiographic cavity that I can measure on a bite wing. I say, how many people with an interproximal cavity have to come in before you do a filling? I don't know. I mean, they literally know nothing. And then I say, well, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going to fly to Provo and see Gordon and Rella, and we're going to talk about bonding strings and bugs. I love dentists. I love them. But god dang, at the end of the day, they're all dentists. Not any of them are business people. And it's guys like you that I bring on the show, because if you could just fix anything on that funnel, if you could say, well, for every 100 people that land on your website, only 3 converted, but we added a YouTube video, and we added this, and we added, and then when they call your front desk, that little girl answer the phone. Man, if she just had any training, instead of converting 1 out of 3, because this is the stats we see of the funnel today on your average starter. 100 people land on the website for 3 to convert to call. 3 have to convert to call before you get 1 butt in the chair. 3 people with a butt have to sit in the chair for you to do 1 filling. Mm-hmm. So my God, anything that fixes that funnel, anything, if you could just take your website zones into 3 out of 100 converting, make it.
So you're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that is my passion, is looking at the overall business of dentistry and figuring out how can I streamline it. I've got tens of thousands of dental students that are graduating that need my services. I know this. So what can I do to help them? And I look at what can technology do, because to some degree I build it once and then it serves all of their needs. And so why do I have all of these dentists trying to build their own solutions? And so my goal is serious social media integration, patient education. When I say social media integration, what I mean is I want to email or text message people that say, here is your pre-op thing. You're going to come in for a crown. Watch this video that shows you the difference between an Empress, EMAX, not amalgam, but PFM, gold. I want the patient to spend their time becoming educated at home so that the dentist doesn't have to spend their time educating them in the chair, because that costs money. And then as the patient learns all of these things, they're more likely to share that video on Facebook, on Instagram, on whatever their social media platform is, and say something like, wow, I never knew there was such a difference in crowns, and now I know. And so that encourages other people to watch that video, and that may attract a new patient to that dentist for care, because they see that dentist that cares about the education of their patients. If I can do anything in my business, it would be to help other people grow their business.
Okay. We're past our brand,
All right.
our 60, but I want to ask two quick overtime, because I'm a big fan of your posts on Dental Town. There's two things that you got to comment on, because you talked about Dentrix, Eaglesaw, Solution Reach, Lighthouse, Demand Force. Your neighbors with Weave.
Yes.
And then I also want to talk about another subject that, well, first give me a comment on Weave, then I'll ask you the last question.
So I want to first say I really like Weave. As far as I think they have a solid product. I admire everything that they've built. I would love to do a lot of what they're doing. I've called the FCC about what it would take to start my own phone company, because you call one company and they're a reseller of another and another and another. And it's like, why am I dealing with a fourth generation reseller? Why don't I just become my own phone company? Weave did it. They've worked to create their own system. They have a lot of value add, and like the gentleman said on his interview, there's no way to provide all of those services without also being the phone service. Maybe. I'll qualify that as a maybe, because I think I've figured out a way that as long as the company is using any voice over IP service, I can potentially tie in and do everything Weave is doing. But I think Weave has a solid product, and because of what they do, I think that they can justify their prices more so than almost any other company.
And how are they, if someone listening to you doesn't know what Weave sells and does versus what you do,
sure.
What's the difference between you two?
So what Weave does differently is they really focus on handling inbound phone calls. So a patient calls in, it pops up on the computer screen, shows a lot of information about that incoming patient, has some predefined scripts of, remind them to schedule this, remind them about this, ask them about this. And that's going to help anybody who answers the phone have a better idea of what to do than if they didn't have that. Because it will give them all of the information right there without any clicking. And so and then in addition to that, of course, they have a social media integration or for reviews. And so they've got several really good products. I'm a fan of what they're doing.
So do you recommend ReminderDental and Weave, or what, just need one or the other?
Of course, I'd like to see people use us.
So you can do all their services?
I currently can't do the pop-up that shows all of the statistics about that patient as far as when their next appointment is. Where I'm going though, I hope to be able to do that. I'd like to be able to show you what their last text message is being sent to them through the reminder service, what their last reply was, and then open up either their treatment plan or their appointment within their practice management chart. But that's going to require a little bit more plug-in integration, and not all software companies are going to allow us to integrate to that level. I don't believe Dentrix will ever be able to link our application directly to a patient's chart.
I know. I've taken a in Star Wars where he says where you're going, Anakin, I can't follow. You know what I mean? You take a turn to the dark side. At this point, I'm just completely committed to Open Dental. I'm just going down the Open Dental because it's kind of like a pyramid. I mean, I can't build the foundation with a bunch of closed proprietary systems that aren't going to let me in.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue building every service, every feature I can off of the data that I get from Open Dental and other MySQL, MSSQL databases where I have free access to everything. If I can provide those services for these customers, but not Dentrix, ultimately, I hope that Dentrix will modify their terms and allow their customers. Now, I don't have a lot of hope.
Oh my God! It'd be easier just to invite the president over for dinner. It's really
just a policy change.
I mean, and that's my last deal. We got to get off this thing because they're sitting in the parking lot cussing at me, saying shut the hell up. But the bottom line is this. If your company doesn't have a religion of availability, you don't have a partner. And I mean, I remember when I used to, whenever I wanted to talk to Patterson, I'd fly to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and go sit and talk to Pete for an hour. I can do that with Benco. I can do that with Stan Bergman and Shine. I can do that with about half the dental companies. And you've seen it. I probably podcast most of those guys. But in my 55 years of experience, when you can't get a hold of the CEO, that is your first red flag and your last red. And you know where I also learned that from? Not only from my dad and other people, but I'll never forget that Beating the Streets by Peter Lynch. And Peter Lynch was kind of like Warren Buffett. In fact, Warren Buffett stayed in Omaha, and he didn't even want to know what all those brokers were saying. He thought it was all voodoo and crazy and all that stuff. I mean, Warren Buffett would say, if you're thinking about buying stock in Boston Market, well, why don't you go eat at Boston Market? Why don't you see if the people like the food? Why don't you walk over to their table and say, hey, does your family like this food? How often do you come here? More than once a month? Why don't you ask the people if they like the manager? Why don't you ask the manager if he likes his manager? And make your decision that way. And Peter Lynch used to, what he used to do in Wall Street, he's the only Wall Street boy, every Monday morning, he'd pack up all of his stuff. He had a travel list. And he would leave, he'd drive out of Manhattan and he'd do a 5-day circle. And instead of reading all this crap on these companies, he would show up and announce. And he had a little checklist. Is it clean? Is it orderly? Was I greeted? Then he walked in there. First person he asked for the CEO. And if he couldn't talk, the CEO, there's a legitimate excuse. He's traveling, he's gone or whatever. But then he'd walk the factory. And it's like when the CEO wasn't there and he couldn't get a tour, I mean, he had all the data. These companies ran into the ground. But when the reception's like, oh my God, I can't believe Alan Hayes is here. He drove all the way from Lehigh, Utah. Oh my God. And then gives them a proud tour and the CEO. And Peter Lynch said, man, I can put all my money in this company and never even check on it. And then that's just like one of the richest guys, period. And my cell phone number's on our contact us page.
Yeah. I signed up a customer last week. We had like 85 text messages back and forth. He had a lot of really good ideas of improvements, and we're working to implement them.
I can't tell you, on my 4 boys are 22, 24, 26, 28. We've never done a family vacation where we didn't stop in on these dental companies. I mean, I'll never forget. It was like when we were in Oregon, we stopped in ADEC. And Ken Austin and his poor wife, who just passed away, Lovelace, I mean, he gave my 4 boys probably the longest tour of anybody ever saw I mean, because they were young boys, they had all these questions. Right. I remember we went to LA, went to Glidewell, and so, I mean, there's Jim Glidewell, the busiest guy on earth, giving a 6, 8, 10, and 12-year-old boy a several-hour tour, and then taking him to the cafeteria for lunch. I mean, and those are just so. If they'll do that on a drive-by, unannounced, think what they're doing for their existing customers. So, you know, it's the same thing when a patient calls up upset. I mean, your receptionist, if she sees that you just finished up a root canal and you're headed back to the break room or your private office, she should just be able to say, hey, Alan, pick up line 2. Mary just told me she wants to strangle you. I mean, the dentist should take that call, not the poor receptionist. So make a religion out of availability and pick your partners well. Your life success is going to be a summary of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're around a bunch of toxic people, if all 5 of your friends are alcoholic, drug addicts, depressed, hate dentistry, a lot of dentists still hanging out with their drinking buddies in dental school who hate dentistry, think it's horrible. That's what I like about going to continuing education. The greatest thing I learned at Pankey and Spear and Coyce and all those deals wasn't so much the material. It was the guys I met at those courses. I mean, I remember when I got my fellowship in missions, it was 9 3-day weekends. Some of the dentist friends I met there have been friends for life. Those are some of the most upbeat, hardcore, loving dentistry guys. And if you surround yourself with partners who love dentistry, dentists that love dentistry, every time you go eat a cheeseburger and watch a Cardinals game, it's basically CE. But hey, Alan, I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for coming on my show today and talking to my homies. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And is Dental Reminders, is that one word or 2?
It's one word, ReminderDental.
ReminderDental. Okay. Okay. So yeah. I noticed on Dental Town, if I search it one word, I pull up certain threads, and if I search it 2 words, I pull up other threads. So ReminderDental is technically one word.
Yeah, well, that's how we've branded it.
Okay.
That's what our business applications are with the state and everything. It just keeps it consistent so that it's.
Okay, well, I know I'm in Phoenix. I know every single person in Utah has at least 3 cousins in Mesa or Gilbert or where I live. So next time you're in town, come by and see me at Dental Town.
Thank you.
All right, have a rockin' hot day, buddy.
You too.